XDR is really the latest example of how our industry, the security industry, is really good at taking concepts that aren't new, that have been around for a long time, sort of shaking them up, repackaging them, and presenting them as something brand new, right? And I think XDR to some extent is that.
Hi, everybody. My name is Mark Greisiger with NetDiligence. I'm here today doing an interview with Jason Straight, who is Jason is the Senior Managing Director at Ankura. We've known each other. We've spoken in the past several times. He's a wonderful expert. We like to pick his brain on ideas, on upcoming trends. He also is leading the charge at Ankura in the managed services area. Jason, thank you so much for being here.
Great to be here with you again, Mark. Thank you.
Yeah, so today we like to do these interviews really just to help keep awareness and educate the cyber risk insurance industry. We support many of the cyber insurers, their customers, the leading brokers out there, and so does Ankura, quite frankly. And again, we thank you for your time. I wanted to talk a little bit today just because ransomware is kind of on a low and then it goes high and it sort of morphs and changes. And how can we best help customers in mid-size market areas? For example, I want to talk a little bit about XDR. We keep hearing about this. What is XDR? And really, do you need it if you're mid-size? So I want to just start in that place with our conversation, Jason. So after you and I chatted, after a bit of slowdown the past few months, whether it was caused by the war or a variety of factors, it seems like we've been seeing resurgence of ransomware, as well as attacks aimed at exfiltrating sensitive customer data. So what have we learned, and how, as a mid-sized organization, can they best defend themselves against these attacks? And what is your team seeing in the front trenches?
Yeah, that's the everyday question for us here. And yeah, as part of the managed services practice here that I lead at Ankura, that includes all the work we do in incident response matters, where we're deploying sensors and just chasing the attackers out of network. So we do this live every day, and yeah, definitely we've experienced a slowdown in certain kinds of attacker activity, specifically ransomware, the corresponding increase in some other stuff, some more sophisticated stuff. But now, yeah, the ransomware stuff seems to be coming back. It's a lot of speculation as to why, certainly the Russia-Ukraine conflict, which actually, I mean, yeah, there's part of it that we know that a lot of the skilled hackers were pulled into, efforts to support their native militaries. But it also created a lot of infighting in some of these crews that are made up of both Russian, or people sympathetic to the Russian side, people sympathetic to the Ukrainian side. And we've actually learned some things that I'm going to reference here today that came out of some of that infighting, that there were some leaks of communication from inside some of the biggest crews that had been operating, in the ransomware area. And this is something we see a lot, where crews sort of fall apart and come back together in different forms. I think that's sort of what we're going through now. But there's simply too much money to be made out there for these guys to stay quiet for very long. So, but one of the things we learned was that these operations, even for those of us who are sort of living and breathing this every day, they're a lot more organized and vertically integrated than we'd realized. We have known, and I think I've done some other talks where I referenced the specialization in each sort of stage of an attack. So you've got crews that specialize in sort of getting that initial access to a network, right? Acquiring credentials, initial access brokers, they're called, and they will sell that access to another group who's good at phase 2, right? Which is going in and maybe doing recon and doing data exfiltration. And then finally, you've got the actual ransomware crews and operators. And we've long known that sort of specialization existed. But what we didn't know is how each of those specialist groups might actually be part of one larger organization. And that's alarming. I mean, it suggests a level of sophistication that is kind of scary for those of us on the defense side. But there are some positives out of it that really gets to this question we're going to talk about today, which is that it creates more chances, more opportunities to detect that attacker behavior before something really bad happens. So, to quote, sort of the father of forensic science, Edmund Locard, every contact leaves a trace, right? And so we've got more contacts, and there's more stuff for us to detect, and that's a good thing for us. We've got more time because the process is a little more drawn out. That initial access might be gained, and then it might only be hours or days, but sometimes it's weeks or months before anybody actually does anything with that access. So there's more indicators. We've got some more time, and we've seen examples of that a lot more. In the last, let's say six to 8 months of detecting precursor behavior of an attacker that hasn't done anything bad yet, right? And that's a huge win for us.
Yeah,
So
interesting.
yeah, I'm sorry, Mark, to interrupt you.
No, I said that's interesting. So, what I find interesting about this sort of semi-lull that we've seen in attackers over the past, say, 6 months since the war started, in some ways it's been so beneficial to the cyber insurance marketplace and end customers, is giving them almost a chance to improve their defenses, take advantage of this lull. And I know the underwriters across the whole cyber insurance community have been doing a better job of communicating, here's what we expect, what controls we expect you to have in place if you want to maintain your cyber insurance coverage, especially for ransomware. And so over the past year or two, I feel like in industry, and especially in the cyber insurance world, we keep hearing about this concept that we chatted about earlier called XDR, or extended detection and response, and being that being the next evolution of defensive technology. And it would go beyond, I guess, EDR, which is endpoint focused. So I want your opinion. I love you specialize in this kind of stuff, Jason. What is the difference? And is XDR really the right choice for, say, a mid-size organization?
Yeah, great question. So I'm gonna become a little bit of an old fogey here and reference the history of the security industry a little bit, at least of the last 10 years. And XDR, which stands for extended detection and response, right? Which is, so EDR, which most people are familiar with, endpoint detection and response. XDR is extended detection and response. One of the challenges we have, though, is that beyond those sort of words, extended detection sort of is pretty self-explanatory. There's no dictionary definition of what XDR is, and it's another one of these terms. You go ask 5 different members of the security community, what is XDR, and you get 10 different answers. To me, I tend to trend towards the cynical, and so I will cynically say that XDR is really the latest example of how our industry, the security industry, is really good at taking concepts that aren't new, that have been around for a long time, sort of shaking them up, repackaging them, and presenting them as something brand new, right? And I think XDR to some extent is that. And all XDR really is, it's the good old, it's aggregating, collecting, and analyzing telemetry from different sources and different types of security tools, right? And getting them to work together. And that is a concept as old as the security industry, going all the way back 10 years. People talk about user behavior analytics, right? Nobody uses that term anymore, UBA. It was the same kind of concept. Like, we're taking indicators from a bunch of different sources and we're combining them. Now, having said that, XDR, there have been a lot of great, fantastic tools and sets of tools introduced in the last couple of years that fall under this XDR banner. So having been for our Ankura, one of the practices that I lead here is the managed detection response, 24/7 managed detection response service. That really is, now we've been doing it basically the same way. I mean, we've updated our tools over the years, of course, but we've been operating since 2014 on a 24/7 basis. And this is long before the term MDR existed, right? We were, when we first came out, we were considered by Gartner to be just sort of a weird MSSP, right? And the term MDR didn't exist. And then MDR came out, and we sort of fell under that banner. Although MDR, and this is partly because of some of the very effective marketing teams out there, with some of the EDR tool leaders. I won't name any names here, but everybody knows who I'm talking about here. MDR came to be defined as really managed EDR, right? And that's it. And so that's what sort of necessitated the introduction of this term XDR to, recognize the fact that, hey, we can do more than just endpoints. But there's a lot of it, well, I don't know a lot, but there's certainly Ankura, we've been doing, essentially managed XDR, to use the new term, to use new terms to apply to something we've been doing for 8 years, right? We've sort of been doing it that way. And look, there's no doubt, more coverage, more chances to detect attacker activity. And by that definition, XDR is quote unquote better than EDR. But look, everybody's got a limited budget. They have limited resources they can put into managing these different tools. And XDR can get very complicated. It takes longer to deploy. It's more difficult to maintain. Obviously using a managed service partner helps with a lot of that. But even for us, like we'll tell, an organization, hey, listen, you guys aren't ready for XDR. The juice isn't worth the squeeze. The extra time and expense of it really isn't worth it when you can get, the 90% plus of what you need through a managed EDR technology. But I will say, that we, and is this, an indication the attackers are getting more sophisticated or focusing more on how to evade EDR technology? Maybe. But we have had, increasing situations where, it's not an EDR tool that gives us the first detection of an attacker behavior. It is, network traffic, NTA, network traffic analytics, that gives us that first clue. Maybe it's we see a beacon or a communication back to a command and control server, right, that wouldn't be visible through EDR. But basically, it's still the case today that if you're starting from scratch, essentially, where I don't mean literally scratch, like everybody's got firewalls, everybody's got antivirus, some of the basic controls, right? And hopefully everybody's got multi-factor authentication, right? We all know how important that is. You got those basics in place. The first place I would go after that to sort of up your game and really harden your defenses against ransomware is managed EDR. Without a doubt. If your biggest problem is that, oh my God, a sophisticated determined attacker could evade my EDR, file under good problems to have, because that's, first of all, that is a problem you can address. We won't get into it here. But that's when you start to think about, okay, we've got EDR, we're solid. Now we can start thinking about adding some of these XDR elements in a strategic way.
Yep. I mean, that's that topic. These additional considerations tease up my next and final question for you. Just wanted to keep this short and sweet, but I know I've heard you say in the past, there's really no such thing as a fully automated defensive system that's going to protect you against today's crazy skilled, smart, attackers. So you still feel that way, given everything we're hearing about advancements in AI, ML, and these security orchestration platforms out there?
Yeah, look, credit where it's due that the technology has really advanced remarkably in the areas of providing automation, AI, machine learning, these SOAR platforms, security orchestration, automated response. We use all of those. We love those. We love ways to make our analysts more efficient, but we have yet to see a tool that can replace an analyst, right? So it's really using technology to make your analysts more effective, to make them more efficient, to allow them to focus on the high value stuff, reduce, sort of distraction, alert fatigue, right? That's a problem that every managed service provider, struggles with. But no, I don't, honestly, not only is it not here today, it's hard to foresee a day where, you can completely eliminate the humans from the process, because again, people sometimes forget, we're being attacked by humans, right? And they're using their brains to figure out how to exploit us. So we need to have our team on the other side. And really, it's stuff like, just you can call it instincts, you can call it sort of hunches that we act on, but that kind of is what we do, where an analyst gets to know what normal looks like in an environment. right?
Yeah.
And yeah, maybe an algorithm can do that, but not with the level of sophistication that a human can do it without even being conscious of it, right? So an analyst will know that something looks off, something just looks a little weird, and they then know they can come up with a creative way to go investigate that. We get some of our best, highest value detections through that. Just an analyst following their nose, going
Yeah.
out and doing some threat hunting, reading an article, right, or seeing a piece of threat intelligence, saying, that reminds me of something I saw 3 weeks ago in this environment. Let me go check that out. And look, I will also put in a plug here, for being technology agnostic and selecting the right tool for the job, right? That's something that we do as well. So, yeah, these automated tools are great, but they're not all great at doing everything, right? So an analyst knowing what tool to bring in for the job is a huge part of what we do as well. And again, as a pure service provider, we don't sell software. We're fully free to bring in whatever tool we think is the best one for the job, the best one to fit a given client.
Yeah. And you said, I'll end on this. You said a lot of important things along the way, but for our audience, and if the audience has access to ERIS Cub, you can learn more about, we've done other interviews with Jason and Ankura and their expertise. We greatly appreciate this, Jason, by the way. But also I wanted to say, like, if you're a mid-sized organization or an SME, you mentioned price tag earlier, Jason. Budgets are a huge consideration, but I feel like looking at the landscape of all these solutions out there, there's something for everybody's budget these days.
Yeah.
And that includes hands-on managed services, even for organizations our size. We have that now, where someone's watching us 24/7. It's hugely important. It's a huge comfort to the cyber insured business, I think, to have that in addition to EDR, XDR, but you also have to have, of course, the multi-layer controls. You referenced a couple early on, like MFA and all the standard stuff. So this is hugely important topic. Thank you again, Jason. Wonderful summary on all this, and we will talk soon. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark. Great to be here.